The wind howled outside the thin walls of my cramped apartment, a draft sneaking through the gaps around the window frame like an Ted guest. It was early November in St. Paul, Minnesota, and the sky hung low and gray, heavy with the promise of snow that hadn't yet fallen. I sat in my worn armchair, one hand curled around a chipped mug of chamomile tea, the other idly flipping through a yellowed copy of National Geographic I'd picked up for 50 cents at the thrift store on Selby Avenue. The pages smelled faintly of dust and someone else's nostalgia, stories of distant jungles and forgotten expeditions that felt a million miles from my life. My name is Clara Hensley, and at 28, I'd carved out a small existence on the edge of this situ place where the winters were brutal and the summers too short to matter. The apartment was a shoebox. One room with a sagging bed, a kitchenette with a stove that clicked ominously before lighting, and a bathroom where the showerhead spat more rust than water. But it was mine, paid for with every aching shift at the warehouse where I loaded boxes onto trucks for 10 hours a day. It wasn't much, but it was a refuge, a quiet corner where I could breathe without someone else's expectations pressing down on me. That afternoon, the silence was fragile, broken only by the faint hum of the space heater in the corner and the occasional creak of the floorboards beneath my feet. Then the phone rang, a sharp trill that sliced through the stillness like a knife. I glanced at the screen and my stomach tightened. I hadn't spoken to him in weeks, not since I'd sent the last payment for their heating oil in September. I pressed the speaker button, setting the phone on the table beside my tea, and braced myself. "Clara." His voice crackled through the line, clipped and casual, like he was ordering coffee instead of dropping a bomb. "You don't need to come home for Thanksgiving this year." I blinked, the words hanging in the air like smoke. "I'm sorry, what?" "We just think it's better if you stay where you are," he went on, as if he'd rehearsed it in front of the mirror. "Lila's been, well, you know how she gets, on edge lately. We don't want any tension." Lila, my younger sister, the golden child who could do no wrong, even when she did everything wrong. I set the mug down, the ceramic clinking against the wood with a sound that felt louder than it should have. "So what you're saying is I'm not in Ted because Lila might get upset?" He sighed, that heavy familiar sigh that always meant "Don't push this, Clara. It's just one day. You'll be fine." I stood abruptly, the chair groaning beneath me, my voice dropping to a low, controlled simmer. "Just one day? You say that like it's nothing, Dad. After I've sent over $5,200 to that house since last winter just to keep you all from freezing." There was a pause, a faint static hum stretching between us. "Don't bring money into this," he said finally, a flicker of irritation breaking through his calm. "You offered to help." "Offered?" I laughed, a sharp hollow sound that bounced off the bare walls. "In January when you called me at 2 a.m. because the furnace died and Mom was crying? I paid that bill. In April when the pipes burst and you couldn't afford the plumber. Me again. And in August when Lila spent half your savings on that ridiculous vintage clothing pop-up that flopped. Who paid for the oil then? Still me." He didn't argue, just let the silence sit there, heavy and accusing. "Family's family, Clara," he said at last, his tone softening into that old, tired refrain. "Lila's been through a lot. She needs calm right now." I turned to the window, staring out at the gray expanse of sky, the first tiny flakes of snow drifting down like ash. "I've been through a lot too," I said quietly. "But I never got that kind of consideration." "Clara, don't make this awkward," he said, impatience creeping in. "It's not personal." I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles whitening. "Then don't expect another cent from me this winter. If I'm not part of the family, don't treat me like an ATM." I hung up before he could respond, the screen going dark as my breath fogged the cold glass in front of me. Outside, the snow fell silently, coating the cracked pavement of the parking lot below. Inside, the room felt emptier than ever. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my hands clasped tight, replaying that call in my mind. They'd done it, cut me out of Thanksgiving as casually as if I were an extra place setting they didn't need. I glanced at a faded photo on the shelf. Me, Mom, and Dad at Thanksgiving 6 years ago, my first year working at the warehouse. I'd taken a Greyhound home that year, $20 in my pocket, just to sit at the table and eat Mom's sage stuffing while Dad grumbled about the Vikings losing again. That warmth was a ghost now. a memory buried under years of one-sided sacrifices. I stood, crossed to my desk, and opened my laptop. The wind picked up outside, rattling the windowpane as I logged into the utility account I'd set up for them 2 winters ago. It had started after a frantic call from Mom. Clara, "It's 45 degrees in here. We can't afford the oil, and I'd taken over ever since. Every month I'd called the company, paid the bill, tracked the deliveries. Overdue law $2,600 that first year. Due law $5,200 this year. All from my savings, my overtime, my skipped meals. I'd done it because I thought that's what family did, step up when no one else could. But now I saw it for what it was. A leash they'd tightened around my neck. I pulled up the payment history, an Excel sheet I'd kept like a secret ledger. Due law $350 in December. Due law $420 in February. Due law $500 in August when Lila's latest scheme drained their accounts. I thought of her then, Lila, with her Instagram perfect life, sipping due law 8 oat milk lattes while I rubbed my aching shoulders after a double shift. Last spring she'd burned through due law $18,000 of Mom and Dad's allowance on a vintage clothing boutique she swore would take off. She'd rented a storefront in Uptown, filled it with overpriced thrift store finds, and threw a launch party with artisanal cocktails and a DJ. 2 months later, it folded. Nobody wanted due law 75 bell-bottoms from 1973, and the leftover stock sat in their garage, gathering dust. Mom and Dad just sighed, said, "She's finding herself," while I wired another payment to keep the heat on. My cursor hovered over the Cancel Service button. One click, and the automatic payments would stop next month. I sat there for a long time, the heater buzzing softly behind me, the snow falling thicker now. I wasn't hesitating because I doubted myself. I was letting go of the girl who thought she had to fix everything. Then I clicked. A pop-up confirmed it. Service will terminate November 3, 2025. 4 weeks before Thanksgiving. I closed the laptop and stepped to the window, watching the flakes pile up. They'd notice eventually. Lila would complain, Mom would fret, Dad would fume, but for once it wouldn't be my problem. The days after that call were a tightrope walk between relief and unease. I woke earlier now, not because my shifts changed, but because sleep felt restless, haunted by echoes of Dad's voice. On November 3rd, the cancellation went through. I got the email while sipping coffee in my kitchenette, the space heater humming at my feet. Outside, the snow fell in heavy sheets, an early taste of Minnesota's unforgiving winter. I thought of their house, a sagging 2-story on Ashwood Street, with its peeling paint and single-pane windows that let the cold seep in like water through a cracked dam. I didn't smile imagining them shivering, but I didn't feel the guilt I'd expected either. It was time they learned I wasn't their safety net. 4 days later, Mom texted, "Clara, the heat's acting up. Can you check it?" I stared at the screen, then set my phone down without replying. That night, Lila sent a message. So immature. No context, no hello, just her usual jab, expecting me to scramble and explain. I turned my phone to silent and went to bed. On the 7th day, Dad called. I let it ring, watching the screen light up until it stopped. A voicemail followed. "Clara, I don't know what's going on. The house is 56 degrees. If you know something, call me." His tone was sharp, edged with worry, but I didn't listen to it twice. Instead, I bundled up in my thrift store coat, walked to the bookstore on Grand Avenue, and bought a paperback thriller. I spent the afternoon at a cafe next door, the radiator blasting heat, the air thick with the scent of espresso and cinnamon rolls. For once, I let myself enjoy something without guilt gnawing at the edges. On the 10th day, the oil company called. "Miss Hensley? Are you renewing the Service for 318 Ashwood Street? The contract was in your name, and we haven't heard from the homeowners." I stood by the window watching snow dust the rooftops. "No," I said firmly. "It's canceled. I'm not responsible for that house anymore." The rep paused, then said, "All right, just confirming no further payments." "That's correct," I replied and hung up. By November 14th, the messages came faster. "Mom, Clara, it's 52 degrees. Your dad won't wear a coat inside and Lila's coughing. Please call. Dad. This isn't about money now. This is family. Lila, fine, act like you were never one of us." I read them all, saved them as a quiet archive of where I'd poured my heart and my paycheck and what I'd gotten back. Nothing but demands. I didn't reply. On the 16th, a snowstorm hit St. Paul, the kind that turned streets into rivers of white and shut down half the city. I stayed inside, wrapped in a blanket, sipping cocoa as the heater purred. I wondered if they were huddled in the living room, piling on every blanket they owned, cursing my name. Maybe they were finally seeing Minute as a checkbook, but as the daughter they'd pushed away. Or maybe not. Either way, I wasn't waiting for their epiphany. The messages kept coming as the temperature dropped. On November 17th, Mom wrote, "Claire, it's 50 degrees. Your dad's coughing, won't take medicine. Can you help?" I stirred a pot of lentil soup, the steam fogging my windows, and didn't respond. On the 19th, Dad called 13 times, leaving a clipped message, "Call me back. This isn't a game." Lila posted an Instagram story, her feet in fuzzy socks. Caption, leaving in a freezer, and I scrolled past without a second thought. On the 21st, Mom's voice trembled in a voicemail. "It's 42 degrees. Your dad's in a coat all day, my hands are numb. Please, Clara." I ate grilled cheese that night, the oven's warmth seeping into the room, and let the phone buzz unanswered. 2 days before Thanksgiving, Dad texted, "Clara, if you're still family, prove it now." I was dicing onions for a stew, the knife steady in my hand. I set it down, stared out at the snow-covered street, and thought of Lila calling me selfish when I refused to fund her ethical jewelry startup last year. Of Dad telling me to toughen up when I asked why I was always the odd one out. Of Mom staying silent every time they chose Lila's comfort over mine. I'd been their shadow for too long. I poured boiling water into a teapot and let the steam rise, a quiet answer to a question they'd never bothered to ask. What about me? Thanksgiving morning dawned cold and still. I woke before the sun, the sky a pale bruise beyond my curtains. I made coffee, toasted bread, spread peanut butter, and peeled an orange, the citrus tang sharp in the quiet air. No turkey, no stuffing, just me. Choosing simplicity over a past I couldn't reclaim. At 10 a.m. I settled on the couch with a documentary about Arctic explorers, the heater humming beside me, when the doorbell rang. I knew who it was before I reached the door. Through the peephole, I saw Dad, his gray coat dusted with snow, his face gaunt and flushed, his eyes hard with that old mix of authority and desperation. I cracked the door, warm air spilling out. "Clara," he said, his breath clouding in the cold. "We need to talk." "I don't think today's the day for that," I replied, leaning against the frame. "You cut the heat," he said, voice flat. "The house is 38 degrees. Your mom's sick, Lila's locked herself upstairs. We can't keep going like this." "I didn't cut anything," I said evenly. "I stopped paying. There's a difference." He scowled. "You know we're not good with that stuff. The contract was yours. When you canceled, they didn't tell us." "It was mine because I took it on," I shot back. 2 years overdue, la 8,000, Dad. I paid every bill while Lila blew your money on her flops, do la 18,000 on that boutique, do la 10,000 on jewelry she never sold. I stood in snow up to my knees waiting for the bus to work, just so you wouldn't freeze. And then you told me to stay away because Lila can't handle me being there. "Don't complicate this," he said, forcing calm. "It's been a hard year. Lila's fragile." I sighed, the sound heavy between us. "She's fragile because you let her be." I stayed quiet when she dropped out of that art school she begged you to pay for. I stayed quiet when she crashed your car and you covered the repairs. But when you excluded me from Thanksgiving for her sake, that was it. He shifted, gripping his hood. "We're broke, Clara. Sold everything worth a dime. Your mom's got a fever. We can't afford the oil up front. I'm asking you to help." "You told me to stay back for Lila's peace," I said, my voice steady. "I did. And I've found my own peace now." His eyes narrowed. "You're punishing us over one dumb call." I opened the door wider, letting him glimpse the warm glow of my apartment, the neat table, the humming heater, the life I'd built. "It's not punishment," I said softly. "It's what happens when you push someone away and expect them to keep giving." He stared, then turned and trudged off, his boots crunching through the snow. I locked the door and poured more coffee, the warmth seeping into my hands. For the first time in years I felt steady, not triumphant, just free. A week later, my cousin Tessa called from Duluth. She was one of the few relatives who still checked in. a no-nonsense woman who'd always seen through the family's dysfunction. "Clara," she said, wind whistling through the line, "your house is a mess. Lila's gone moved out after some guy dumped her. She's crashing on a couch in Eden Prairie now." I sat at my table cradling a mug of ginger tea. "Not surprised," I said. "She always lands somewhere." "Your mom's in a motel off Highway 10, Tessa went on. "Cheap place, thin walls. She's got pneumonia, mild but bad enough. Your dad sold Grandpa's coin collection, those old silver dollar stove by oil, but it's only a week's worth." I tightened my grip on the mug. Grandpa's coins had been his pride, polished and displayed in a velvet case. Now they were scattered on eBay, traded for a fleeting burst of heat. "They okay?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "They're surviving," Tessa said. "But I'm not worried about them. You okay?" "I'm fine," I said, and meant it. "Just sad it came to this." "Don't be," she said firmly. "You did what you had to. They only valued you when you were useful. That's not familia, that's a transaction." We talked a bit longer before hanging up. I stared at my reflection in the dark phone screen, not angry, not broken, just clear. The house on Ashwood Street hit the market a few days later. A faded listing on a real estate site. Fixer-upper, motivated sellers. Tessa said they couldn't keep it, not with winter sinking its teeth in. I fell back into my routine: early mornings with coffee, shifts at the warehouse, stops at the market for apples and bread, evenings with jazz records and novels. The messages from Mom, Dad, and Lila stopped after Dad's VY sit, a silence that felt like a gift. Sometimes I dreamed of that old house, the kitchen where Mom taught me to knead dough, the porch where I'd read comics in summer. But in the dreams it was always cold, empty, and I'd walk away without looking back. In early December, Tessa called again, laughing through her words. "Clara, Lila's online, crying about how you abandoned the family in a crisis. Full sob story, tears, shaky voice, the works. Not one mention of the money you sent or how they ditched you for Thanksgiving." I smirked, stirring cocoa on the stove. Let her spin it. I don't need to justify myself anymore. "Love this, Clara," Tessa said. "Rock solid. You're a damn inspiration." That night I sat by the window watching snow glow under the streetlights. The world outside was frozen, but I'd learned to keep my own fire burning, small, steady mine. Mid-December brought a knock I didn't expect. I was folding laundry when it came, soft, hesitant. Through the peephole I saw Mom, bundled in a too-big coat, snow caked on her boots, her face pale and drawn. I opened the door a crack, the cold rushing in. "Clara," she said, voice trembling. "I'm sorry for just showing up. I didn't know how else to reach you." "Why are you here?" I asked, keeping my distance. "It's a blizzard out there." "Bus, then walked?" she said, coughing into her scarf. "An hour. I needed to see you." I waited, letting her fill the silence. "I've been thinking," she said, clutching her bag. "About Thanksgiving, about everything. I was wrong, not just that day but all those years I let you carry us. I took it for granted." I tilted my head, studying her. For once she looked raw, no excuses, no deflections. "Lila regrets it too," she added. "Says it shouldn't have gone this far. She told me, Clara doesn't owe us anything." "Too late for that," I said, a dry edge to my voice. "You only see that after I stop paying, after it all collapses. That's not regret, that's convenience." "No," she said, tears welling. "I mean it. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you sooner." I opened the door wider, not to welcome her, but to let her feel the warmth I'd built alone. "You picked Lila every time," I said. "When I needed a place at the table, you chose her comfort. When I kept the house running, you comforted her failures. I'm done being the fallback." "Am not asking you to come back," she said, voice breaking. "I just wanted you to know you matter. Even if you never forgive me, I get it." I didn't answer right away. We stood there, the wind howling between us, until she stepped back and disappeared into the snow. I closed the door, the lock clicking shut, and returned to my jazz and my blanket. No lightness, no regret, just certainty. January came, blanketing St. Paul in ice and quiet. My apartment stayed warm, a sanctuary of soup and scarves and solitude. Mom's VY sit was the last I heard from her. No texts, no calls, not even a New Year's card. Tessa kept me posted. Lila was bouncing between friends' couches posting pleas for help online. Mom was with a cousin in Iowa rethinking her life. Dad was scraping by, selling off scraps to survive. The house sold in late January. A bargain for some flipper who'd gut it and move on. I lived my days simply work, market, books, jazz. One evening I stopped by the bookstore again. The owner grinned. Back for more, huh? Toughing out the cold. I picked a novel about a woman who burned her past to ashes and started over. At home I brewed tea and sat by the fire, its glow dancing on the walls. Somewhere they were still shivering, borrowing heaters, filing forms, clinging to a life I'd left behind. I didn't belong there anymore. The fire crackled and I sipped my tea, the steam curling upward. Winter stretched on, but I'd found my warmth not in their approval, but in the peace I'd claimed for myself. I'd learned that family isn't a debt you owe forever. Sometimes it's a line you draw, a fire you build, a door you lock behind you. And I didn't regret a single step.